Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A federal jury has found Dzhokhar Tsarnaev guilty on all 30 charges for his role in the Boston Marathon bombing that killed 3 and injured hundreds 2 years ago this month. Tsarnaev was also convicted in the murder of a police officer in the ensuing days. Bombing survivor Karen Broussard welcomed the verdict.
We just, as a group, we wanted to come out and say thank you to everyone who's worked so hard to make this happen. We're obviously grateful for the outcome today. It's not a happy occasion, but it's something that we can put, one more step behind us.
During the trial, Tsarnaev's defense attorneys admitted he joined his older brother, Tamerlan, in setting off 2 explosions. The jury will now choose between the death penalty and a sentence of life without parole. Massachusetts bars the death penalty, but the case is taking place at the federal level. We'll have more on the verdict after headlines. Protests are underway in South Carolina over a white police officer's fatal shooting of an unarmed African-American man who was running away. On Wednesday, dozens of people rallied outside of North Charleston City Hall. The victim, Walter Scott, had been stopped for having a broken brake light, which protesters say was part of a pattern of harassment of African-Americans over minor offenses. The officer, Michael Slager, was fired by the police force on Wednesday, one day after his indictment for murder. Police had initially backed Slager's claim that he feared for his life, but they were forced to retract that after a witness came forward with video of the shooting. Speaking at City Hall, North Charleston Mayor Keith Summy announced a new order for body cameras.
We received a grant to purchase 101 body cameras. Those body cameras are on order. Today, I made an executive decision and have notified my council. We have already ordered this morning an additional 150 body cameras so that every officer that's on the street in uniform will have a body camera.
Meanwhile, the witness who filmed the video has spoken out for the first time. In an interview with NBC News, Feidin Santana said he felt a duty to hand the footage over to Walter Scott's family.
I thought about his position, their situation. I say, that if I would have a family member that would happen, I would like to know the truth, about all this. And that was the reason, I returned the information, the video, to them.
In Yemen, Saudi-led airstrikes targeting Houthi rebels are continuing, with the reports of fierce fighting in the city of Aden, former stronghold of the ousted president Abdurabu Mansour Hadi. There are reports of rockets landing on people's homes. The World Health Organization reports at least 643 people have been killed and over 2,200 wounded since the conflict between Houthis and forces loyal to Hadi erupted on March 19th. Meanwhile, the Obama administration is facing criticism for failing to evacuate its citizens from Yemen, despite backing the Saudi-led bombing campaign. We'll be speaking with a citizen who evacuated himself back to the United States later in the broadcast. Iran has asked Pakistan to reject involvement in the Saudi Arabia-led military campaign in Yemen. The Saudi government sought Pakistan's help this week in what was seen as a prelude to a potential ground invasion. Zarif's comments come as Secretary of State John Kerry has called out Iran for what he says is Tehran's heavy backing of Houthi rebels. Speaking to PBS, Kerry said the U.S. will not tolerate countries, quote, that engage in overt warfare across lines, international boundaries, and other countries.
We're very concerned about what's going on there, and it's just not a fact. There are obviously supplies that have been coming from Iran. There are a number of flights every single week that have been flying in, and we trace those flights, and we know this. We're well aware of the support that Iran has been giving to Yemen. And Iran needs to recognize that the United States is not going to stand by while the region is destabilized or while people engage, in overt warfare across lines, international boundaries in other countries.
Kerry's comments come one day after the Pentagon said it would expedite U.S. weapon shipments to aid the Saudi-led military campaign in Yemen. The International Committee of the Red Cross is calling for immediate access to the Syrian refugee camp of Yarmouk, which is under siege by the Islamic State. The Red Cross said emergency medical care is urgently needed for residents trapped by violence and lacking basics like water. A spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said the situation in Yarmouk is dire.
The situation in the camp remains extremely tense, with street fighting continuing and unconfirmed reports of aerial bombardments of civilian areas. UNRWA remains extremely alarmed at the sustained hostilities as they continue to inflict unimaginable pain and suffering to the 18,000 Palestinian and Syrian men, women, and children trapped inside Yarmouk, who survive under constant threat of armed violence and remain unable to safely access water, food, and basic health care.
3 U.S. soldiers have been wounded in Afghanistan after coming under fire from an Afghan counterpart. The shooting in Kabul followed a meeting between Afghan and U.S. officials. 3 American contractors were killed by an Afghan soldier in January. A high court in Pakistan has ordered criminal charges against 2 CIA officials for a deadly drone strike in 2009. John Rizzo, the CIA's former acting counsel, and Jonathan Bank, the agency's ex-station chief, would face charges including murder, terrorism, and conspiracy. Bank fled Pakistan in 2010 after his cover was blown. Pakistani authorities had lobbied against the case, saying it could jeopardize ties with the United States. It'll be up to police to formally file the charges. The court's action follows a 5-year campaign by Karim Khan, who lost his teenage son and brother in the 2009 attack. In a statement, Khan said, quote, "This is a victory for all those innocent civilians killed in U.S.-led drone strikes. As a citizen of Pakistan, I feel somewhat reaffirmed that perhaps people like me from Waziristan might also be able to get justice for the wrongs being done to them." Human rights advocates and family members of victims are celebrating a pair of victories in long campaigns to deport Salvadoran generals accused of U.S.-backed atrocities. On Wednesday, former General Carlos Eugenia Vides Casanova was deported to El Salvador from the United States, ending a 16-year legal battle. In a ruling last month, the Board of Immigration Appeals found there is ample evidence General Vides was complicit in the rape and murder of 4 U.S. churchwomen in 1980, as well as the torture of political prisoners. He's the highest-ranking foreign military leader to be deported under a 2004 law barring human rights violators from U.S. soil. Vides was a close U.S. government ally during his stint as defense minister for the Salvadoran junta between 1983 and 1989. The churchwomen's families have fought for years to hold him and other U.S.-backed Salvadoran officials responsible. The deportation of General Vides comes as the U.S. government has moved to deport another Salvadoran general wanted in Spain. A UN inquiry has named Inocente Orlando Montano as among the top military officials who approved the murder plot that led to the 1989 slaying of 6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper, and the housekeeper's daughter. The Jesuits had been outspoken advocates for the poor and critics of human rights abuses committed by the U.S.-backed Arena government. Montano lived in Boston for about a decade before being arrested in 2011. He was sentenced in 2013 on charges of immigration fraud for lying about his background. Prosecutors say he came to the United States in part to avoid being brought to justice for the Jesuits' murders. He's among 20 Salvadoran officials who've been indicted by a Spanish court. And President Obama has endorsed a call to ban so-called conversion therapy for transgender people. The move came in response to a petition launched after the suicide of Leila Alcorn late last year. Alcorn was a 17-year-old transgender woman who walked into traffic after leaving a suicide note describing how she suffered from conversion therapy and attempts by her Christian parents to change her. More than 120,000 people have signed the petition in 3 months. In a statement, the White House said, quote, "We share your concern about its potentially devastating effects on the lives of transgender as well as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and queer youth. As part of our dedication to protecting America's youth, this administration supports efforts to ban the use of conversion therapy for minors," the White House said. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.